Just before we get started, just a quick information check or information share. Sandeep, and so we have shared the session recap of the previous session, which is the story session where Naveen um, gave us the entire walkthrough of the synthetic identity fraud yesterday. So that is available on our Google Classroom now. And we have shared more like a preparatory material on Google Classroom today morning, sometime maybe at 11 or 12 o'clock, regarding the root cause analysis. So one of the techniques that we'll be using as part of our current design challenge. So I hope each one of you had an opportunity to go through that and then review the YouTube material. Did you, if someone hasn't, can you please let me know accordingly, like we can try to cover some of the details in this session.
I haven't. I did not.
Okay. No worries.
You're talking about the 5 whys thing, right,
Yes.
Madhu? Yeah.
Yes,
I've gone.
How about you, Aditya?
Yes, yeah, I did go through it.
Okay. I know Praveen has already gone through it in the past. Not sure if you have gone through it again, Praveen.
Yeah, I looked over all of my stuff from last time, like when I made the whole chart and everything, so I just kind of reviewed all of that and everything. So
Perfect.
I got
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so in that case, let's just maybe spend 3 to 4 minutes very quickly to touch upon the key points on the root cause analysis. Okay. Let me share my screen. So this was the material that has been shared. It's a YouTube. So we're not gonna go through the entire video. I'm just gonna pause at specific points. All right. The root cause analysis is more of a methodology for anyone to identify what went wrong. In most cases, it is used to identify any of the issues. But from the principal's perspective, you can use the same methodology to identify what went really well as well whenever there is a positive event or a successful event that has happened. Okay. Just to understand what exactly helped out in that positive outcome. It is heavily used in the non-engineering fields, primarily mechanical engineering, aerospace engineering, again, most of the other engineering fields as well, and definitely in software engineering too, to identify any of the root causes whenever there is any. The concept is the moment when you identify a problem, you just keep asking the question of why. Okay, why? Who are either working on that particular problem, or who are responsible for delivering some of the outcomes. Right? Now, the moment when you ask that question, one or more of them are going to respond with some responses. And then you keep asking the question of why again, until to a point where you're satisfied with the response that yes, this is the true underlying root cause. And this is, if we fix this one, most of our issues will be fixed. If not all, at least like most of it. Okay. In this video, or actually before we jump into any of the example that we are going to go through in the video, any questions on that one, Abhilash primarily?
No, I'm clear.
Okay. And I just skipped one particular detail. Again, 5Y, the root cause analysis is more of a methodology, right? And you can use several techniques for you to enable or embrace that methodology to get to the root cause. And 5Ys is one such technique. There are other techniques like Pareto analysis, fishbone diagram that people use. And at least in my experience, depending upon the application and the issue that is in hand, one particular technique might seem a bit more smoother or easier than the other techniques. But on paper, you should be able to fit each of the techniques to identify the root cause. So yeah, so this is the example that the video talks about. I'll give you just a minute, Abhilash, to go through the information.
Yes, I got it.
Perfect. So again, as we were discussing earlier, you identify the problem and then you keep asking the question of why, and you will get some response, and then you'll keep on asking that question until you find maybe the underlying root cause. And the moment, actually, let me, so these are probably some of the, so this was the eventual outcome, right? The company's website was down. And at each step, at each iteration of when you ask the question why, you would identify a problem as well. And theoretically, you can try to solve the problems or the symptoms that you are seeing at each of these levels. Okay. So for the symptom that you're seeing, which is it ran out of memory, you can try to say that, okay, immediately you try to boost the memory of that machine where you are hosting your website. Okay. That will fix the problem for the time being. Similarly, if you go into the next level of symptom that has been observed, which is because it was incorrectly configured. So maybe you can involve someone to change the configuration of the memory of that particular machine, and so on. Okay. So the bottom line is for each level of the cause that you identify, you can try to take a countermeasure or a fix to cover up that sort of like symptom. Okay. And this is the symptom. The website ran out of memory. That was a symptom. And the deeper you go or the deeper countermeasure that you implement, that is highly likely going to fix not only the current uh, problem, maybe any future problems that you might have. You probably are going to face as well if you are not fixing it. Right. Just to take an example on that one, even if you increase the memory for this particular occurrence, for this instance, if the underlying root cause, which is, well, the team assumed that it was obvious that you don't need to provide the configuration, the RAM configuration setting, that might occur when in the next release, whenever there is a next release, a next version release of the website, right? So every time you might update your website, you might go through this issue again. But the moment when you solve this particular underlying root cause, which is have a very clear communication with the site administrator and the development team, then you would have made sure that any future occurrences wouldn't happen. That is the power that the root cause analysis gives us, enables us with. Is that clear, Abhilash and everyone?
Yes, yes.
All right. So I think that's pretty much it. Very simple technique, very, very simple technique, but very effective in making sure that if you are trying to solve a symptom or if you're trying to solve a root cause. And depending upon the application or the severity of the problem in hand, sometimes you might have to implement countermeasures which solves the symptoms for the short term while you are working on implementing countermeasures for the actual root cause, which might take some time. Again, it all depends upon application to application. All right. Yeah, just most of the advantages are pretty obvious. Disadvantages is again depending upon with whom you are having these discussions on regarding the problems that you are facing, the issues that you are facing. You might expect different responses because everyone has different either the subject matter expertise uh, or it could be that uh, you do not have the right person who has probably faced that issue or has been working on that issue. Okay. All right. That's pretty much it. That wraps up. Uh, any questions, Abhilash, Pitan, and yeah, all right. So that's great. So which means we can jump on to our session, which is performing the root cause analysis of the synthetic identity fraud. So this is our agenda. We already reviewed the 5 Eyes technique. We are going to do the root cause analysis, and then for whatever countermeasures that we are going to come up with, or the solutions that we are going to come up with, in a way try to identify what exactly do we need to do. So basically the requirements for us to implement that countermeasure. Okay. So let's take a scenario of, I don't know, Naveen works for Visa, but the synthetic identity fraud can happen to any company, any finance company, right? So the company is experiencing losses, and as a, let's imagine that each one of you are part of the executive leadership team. Now, you need to ensure that you identify that there is synthetic identity fraud problem existing in your company. Now you need to figure out what to do, right? Yeah. So how do you, let's just try to have an conversation. How do you try to go about it? Maybe Aditya, you want to go first?
I guess first you pinpoint the source of where it happened.
So the scenario that we are picking is at the leadership level, at the executive leadership level, they realize that there is problem and the company is facing losses, incurring losses because of the synthetic identity fraud. So they are already identified it, but they need to figure out why it's happening to them.
Okay. So, am I supposed to take corrective actions, or am I supposed to discuss what happens next?
Anything. You are part of the executive leadership team now.
Okay. I guess you talk down to whoever's below you and figure out what's happening and why it's happening, and where it's originating from, what product or what platform of that company is being attacked or is under attack. So, I think you get the facts.
Sorry, Aditya. Let me just prompt with one other item. So you guys have gathered, and you know for a fact that your company is experiencing financial losses. You also know it's happening because of synthetic identity fraud. So now, the first question is, what is the first question you should be asking as a leadership team?
How did they figure out that synthetic identity is happening? Like what what is the symptom that they saw? Like, what is the thing?
Is that the first question you'll ask?
Um, I mean, so there is a problem. A problem is originated. If we know how it is originated, like what is the reason to see that problem? So there might be some real life instances, or there might be some data points which actually made them see this problem, right? So that should be the start of the problem, where we can start digging in, like how. Or that's a good starting point. I feel like that, but could be
Okay.
something else could be good too. Yeah.
Let me ask a follow-up question to prompt some thinking. You are the leadership team of the company, and let's say you meet every 2 weeks. How many problems do you usually discuss in that meeting?
Maybe just like a few, like the ones that are of the most importance and of the highest priority are the ones that you discuss in those meetings.
How do you decide priority?
I guess the ones with the greatest implications in regards to how they affect the company, whether it be financially or like in any other metric, but the ones with like the greatest implications and the ones with the greatest effects on the company.
Do the rest of you agree with that, what Apramya said?
To an extent, I mean, what the problem is would be a very good place to start with any kind of a problem, like understanding a deep dive into what the problem is, because if we don't really know what the problem is properly, then we don't really know what we're doing. So essentially, when we're doing priorities of tasks, we first look at deadlines. If there are no deadlines as such, then we look at financial implications, as well as how big of a problem or what the problem exactly is. That's sort of my understanding.
So what I heard from you, Bitan, is actually similar to what Apramya was saying, which is how big is the impact? Is this a problem that is worth doing anything about? Or is it worth the executive leadership team's time?
Correct.
So if that's the first question you're asking, or if that's what you think most leadership teams will start with, then what's the first question you ask?
I guess
Who's
like,
getting impacted?
Okay.
Maybe. Sorry, I think Apramya, you were saying.
oh yeah, I do you mean like what's the first question that we would ask in regards to the synthetic identity fraud, or just in general?
I'm just prompting you and asking questions.
Okay. Well, I guess yeah, you would decide like how. I guess maybe another question we could ask is like how much of a loss is the company incurring because of synthetic identity fraud? Like how big is the issue?
And why is that question important?
I guess that will allow us to like really rank it in terms of priority for the company, and how much effort and how much time and resources we want to expedite, like how much we want to really resources we want to allocate towards this problem. And I mean that would be a huge step in determining the solution as well, because if we don't have an idea on how important the problem is, then we can't accurately come up with the right solution.
But just considering past and present, like what is the loss till now is not a good metric. Like we should actually consider the potential of the problem, because some things can stop and some things can actually multiply. So maybe if the potential of the problem is very high, maybe that should be more important. Or,
Okay, great. So now let's fast forward. Let's imagine that you've asked these questions, you have assessed that this is a big impact because there are financial losses that have already happened. There are financial losses that are anticipated, and it's a big customer experience impact, and maybe even uh, loss of customers potentially, which will be it'll translate into a big financial impact. So now you have prioritized this as a problem as a leadership team. Now, what's the first question you ask? Okay, let's simplify this a little bit, Madhu. Let's go to the next page and start with, let's say you are the cybersecurity team. And you have to do a root cause analysis. Now you are only discussing this with the cybersecurity team. So where will you start? And how will you do the root cause analysis?
I guess you could try starting with like instances where synthetic identity fraud is happening. So like you can figure out a specific instance or instances on within the whole database on how that happened, and that could be a good starting point for you to analyze that specific instance of synthetic fraud and what happened in regards to the company's policies that allowed that situation to really happen.
So do you mean use it as a case study to analyze the problem?
Basically, like looking at it in the lens, like if you identify like one instance of synthetic identity fraud, and then really seeing like, okay, like what policies and how did our cybersecurity team allow this to happen, and then you just go down that hierarchy within the 5 whys and figure out what exactly went wrong for that one specific instance, and I guess that would provide you with insights.
Okay. So you're right, Apramey, that case studies are helpful or instances are helpful. So there will be instances of the biggest impacts potentially. So let's say you have been provided 5 instances of the top impacts. Now, we are using the 5 whys technique. So of course, what's the first why that you should ask? And remember, you are the cybersecurity team.
You're in mute, Bhutani, if you're speaking.
Oh, I was trying to think of it myself. I think maybe asking why did it happen? Like, where was the flaw in our system? Maybe.
Yeah. So because it's the 5 whys analysis. Yeah. So yes, it is a why question. So what's the question?
Maybe asking why did it happen to us? Like, why us specifically? Does that make sense? Sorry.
No, I'm just asking the other A's, Aditya, Abhilash, and Apurva. What do you guys
maybe you can figure out what is the indication or the fact that led us to conclude that a synthetic identity fraud is happening. Was there a particular red flag or an indicator? Then maybe find out how long it's been going on for. Did it happen?
Because that's why the framing that we did. So all of that analysis has happened. Executive leadership team has prioritized this to be an important problem because they believe there is a big potential of losses. So all of that analysis has happened. Now the cybersecurity team, the baseline is, this is our top priority for the company. Now, how do you identify the root cause?
Maybe we can start with, why did our cybersecurity team not identify this problem? Like, why did they not catch the synthetic fraud happening?
Okay.
So is asking why question is very important, like who, how, where. So is that something which we can ask too, or should we stick to the 5 whys?
Yeah, you can ask any question, okay. But since this particular technique uses 5 whys analysis, and we have found that to be a very impactful way and a very effective way to get to the root cause. But why don't you have a discussion amongst the 4 of you, and let's see what you guys come up with.
Yeah, actually,
you have to identify the root cause analysis from a cybersecurity standpoint.
Yeah. What, Sandeep? I'm so sorry.
Yes,
I hope everyone knows what are the responsibilities or the deliveries of cybersecurity.
Sort of. I mean, they are responsible in keeping the organization like relatively safe from all kinds of cyber attacks, as well as set up firewalls, etc., and so on. Am I missing something? Sorry, I might be missing something.
No, that is correct, Bitan. At the highest level, that the cybersecurity team is supposed to protect the company's data and assets, and it is also supposed to protect all of the channels or entry points, secure all of them, where somebody may be able to get fraudulent access or inadvertent access.
One of the why questions we can ask is why this problem occurred to whoever it is occurred. Like, why only them? That could actually give some things that are relevant to the problem. And also, as Akrame said, why was this problem not identified earlier? That is also a very good question which we need to ask.
Yeah, I think about my question, maybe that one isn't as good of a starting point one. Maybe a better starting point one would be like, why was someone actually able to go past our security measures? Like, why were they actually able to beat them? Maybe that would be a great starting point. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think that makes sense because finding out why it happened would be a good place to start, and then finding out why our system wasn't good enough, or what exactly was the issue which allowed, or where exactly was the place where that breach could have occurred from. That would be a second follow up, because I feel that if we ask why our team wasn't able to fix it, that's more of a question on blame rather than a constructive question on how do I solve it as quickly as possible. But that's
Right.
just my opinion. It might be.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I feel like when we ask why wasn't our team able to solve it, like we diverge from the
Solution.
Sorry, what was that?
I said we diverge essentially from the solution.
Right. Yeah,
at this
we're not
point.
looking at solving on how this can't happen the next time. We're like going back to how our team can solve it maybe once it already happens, rather than how can we stop it from happening in the first place.
Aditya, did you have some thought? Sorry.
No, I think in terms of why you guys kind of covered it, maybe we can also include why is it critical that we investigate it, and why are we investigating it, and what are the impacts it's going to have. Probably that's another thing to consider.
Is
So
that already happened? Sorry.
So if you were to sequence those whys, because you have to uncover it in more depth. So the first question, can you guys agree on the first question?
I think maybe the first one I'm thinking is, why was that able to happen? Like, why was our security not like why didn't we identify, but why was it even able to happen in the first place, like to us?
I think what Aditya mentioned would go first, in my opinion, because so understanding the impact and the financial implications, like assuming that we are completely at base zero and we have no idea of what's happening, finding out that would make sense. And then when we have a better idea of what's going on and how big of an issue this is, maybe we start asking the questions on, like Aprema said, like why this has happened to us, like why specifically our company, then maybe asking where or why was there a breach, like if there was a breach, why was our firewall or whatever system we have in place, why wasn't it able to catch it? So finding out the exact loophole which was breached, and then maybe going on to ask questions on uh, the tech stack or things like that. That's where I'm at in my head.
Yeah, I agree with you, but
I'm curious. Itan and Abhilash, you both mentioned, why is it happening just to us?
Mhm.
Why did you make the assumption that it is happening just to your company, and how does that matter?
no, what I meant was why did this happen I was talking about the data point, like the instances of the people who affected. It's not about the company, but why did this happen to the instances of the people who maybe their behavior or the way they are using the technology is different or something like that, behavioral patterns that could actually reveal something. But again, what I'm unable to understand is synthetic identity fraud. How does it concern with the cybersecurity team? Like it's no one is breaching anything. They're just making they're just like using the system to cheat. So it's the problem is in the system, not in the cybersecurity actually. um, I don't
Is
know
it-
if that is very relevant or
is
not.
it- So, okay, let's go back and refresh what synthetic identity means. Can one of you remind us what synthetic identity is?
Well, my understanding is that when people use a real person's data and then use made up data to create a completely new individual, and then using that new individual that's completely made up, they commit fraud by, let's say, for example, I make a new person up and then I start a bank account at a specific institution and I take loans or I take deposits using completely made up data, and then the losses are incurred predominantly financially on the company, but then if I use someone's social security or something, I could be hurting their credit score or something like that.
So that's a great point. So, Abhilash, you're right. It is possible that cybersecurity would not care, but they may care if some data from the company was stolen and then it was used to create other synthetic identities. Because remember, there has to be some ounce of truth in that synthetic identity for it to pass muster. So either the social security number or some other PII attribute. But usually what the fraudsters will do is they will not steal Abhilash or Bitan's identity and then try to create a synthetic identity, because you guys are likely to check your credit score more frequently. But if I had past customers or deceased customers or something, I could possibly steal their identity and then use it to create synthetic identities. So that could be one of the reasons cybersecurity is involved. But you are right that it is possible that cybersecurity has nothing to do with it, because uh, people used some other identity that they stole to have fraud impact on our company, but the data wasn't stolen from us in the first place. So that is a very good question. Okay. So maybe, Madhu, we show them what a possible root cause analysis could look like for the cybersecurity team. And then the real exercise is, we'll tell you what the real exercise is. Let's show you a sample of if cybersecurity were involved, what might it look like?
So from the company's perspective, the impact that you would be thinking about is, well, you are experiencing the financial loss, right? So you are experiencing that, and the first question that you would ask is the why. Why are you experiencing the losses? And one of the scenarios would be, one of the situation could be because the fraudsters are using the synthetic identities to open the accounts and use the credit to perform the fraud. Now, why are the fraudsters able to do that? Because our customer data was compromised. So this is a scenario where as Sandeep mentioned, since the synthetic identity involves some real data and some made up data. So part of the customer real data was compromised. And why was it compromised? Because in this instant, in this scenario or the example, the data breach did indeed happen in the company. So that's why they did not have enough adequate or enough security measures which could have prevented the data breaches. And why they did not have enough security measures? Because they did not prioritize it as one of the top important activities to do. And also they did not have enough people to work on that. Why did not they have enough people? It's because, again, it goes back to they did not prioritize it. That's why they did not release enough funding to that particular department. Okay. And why did they not prioritize it? Maybe, again, either as a head of the cybersecurity team or the entire executive leadership team. Why did they not prioritize it? Because, well, they thought that they did not estimate any risks or any of the losses that can potentially be incurred through the synthetic identity fraud. So this is, again, purely from if we keep on asking the cybersecurity teams among themselves, the series of 5 whys or multiple whys in this case. Okay. Now, so again, this is more of as a more not exactly a sample, one of the branch on how this investigative analysis could look like if you want to perform the root cause analysis. Okay. Now, the exercise, going back to what Sandeep just mentioned, you as a team have to do this 5-why analysis now on the, or not on the, you thinking you as a fraud risk management team. Okay. So let's take a moment to ensure if all of you know what a fraud risk management team responsibilities would be.
Yes, they identify and mitigate fraud and probably analyze the risk and come up with a plan if something goes wrong.
Yep, both. Yes. Yes.
Do they need to consider any trade-offs?
I mean, doing a basic cost benefit analysis would probably be important because understanding where you're employing your man hours to try and fix a problem, getting an idea of how much of time versus how much of money saved would be a good idea, maybe.
Okay.
Okay. So do you guys want to jump into performing the root cause analysis?
Yeah, well, we can start.
So just for your own help, I guess I copied.
Yeah, the old one would actually help.
Exactly. So that's why I copied it in here. And yeah, your analysis can look completely in a different way. Okay. It can have a branch here itself or here itself, anywhere, or it may not even have a branch.
Anything, Madhu.
I can't.
Oh,
You're
okay.
Not sharing one.
Sorry. Okay. Thanks, Adit. Thanks, Pita. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. So yeah, I just copied the root cause analysis that we did for this as a cybersecurity team. And now you need to do more of a working session, you being part of the fraud risk management team. Okay. This particular tree structure view could look completely different depending upon how you come up with. I can go ahead and then change the layout. Okay. So you guys can discuss and I can capture the information the moment when you say that, yes, Madhu, after this one, this is the next, this is why it's happening. And then I'll fill out the information.
I feel like the second box would be the same again. Right? I mean, it's like the fraudsters are using the synthetic identities. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I feel 1 and 2 should remain the same because essentially the problem remains the same and who's getting affected remains the same. So maybe from that perspective, we could consider 1 and 2 to be the same. What about you guys, Abhilash and Aditya?
Still thinking. Because if we keep it same, then the third step would become difficult to vary from what is already existing. I'm just trying to think we can see it in the broad risk management team perspective, maybe.
So I think from step like or the third box onward, we could start thinking about the benefit of mitigating that fraud. Like how big is the fraud? How much of a hit have we taken? So maybe first figure out that there is a fraud going on, and then figure out who's getting affected. Third step, try and figure out, is it worth our while to fix it? Like obviously it's worth our while to fix it on a smaller scale, but is it important to fix it like all across the board maybe? Like do we spend so much time fixing it right at this point, making it like a P0 bug and then like treating it like that? Or maybe
that's not a why, right? The third box which you are mentioning.
I mean, we could make it into a why question.
Okay.
That I don't think that will be a problem.
Okay. So yeah, we can actually. Yeah, we can actually put the second box as the same, and then go ahead and then see if it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So Bitan and Abhilash, let me provide some guidance. So Abhilash, you were right that the objective is not to frame a question as why. The objective is to ask why is something happening. So my suggestion is, instead of just going through a series of assumptions, wait at each step, discuss if that is the right why question, and then figure out what is the next why question, which uncovers that scenario that you all agreed on.
So then, I mean, I feel like it would be the same, right? We're asking, why are we experiencing losses? And we're experiencing losses because fraudsters are using it.
Then the second box should be same with that logic, since we already asked why on the first box.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess Uncle, we're good for the second one.
Are you good with that, Aditya?
Yeah, I think I'll agree with it as well.
Okay. By the way, as we were discussing earlier, depending upon whom we talk to, this 5-way analysis, the information in it could slightly differ. So it's not that we are expecting, Sandeep and I, we are expecting exactly the response that we want to hear. Okay, so don't worry about that. Just try to think purely from what information that you have in here, and then just brainstorm.
I guess then the next question would be like, why are the fraudsters able to use synthetic identities? And now, instead of looking at it from a cybersecurity point of view, we just shift our lens and look at it from a fraud risk management point of view. So what do you guys think would be the reason for like, why are they able to use synthetic identities?
It should be some kind of loophole in the system, maybe something like that. So the loopholes can be multiple. So here we might need to consider multiple paths.
Right. Okay. And I feel like we get to make an assumption, right? I mean, I don't know, like there's something I always have a question with when we're using a made up scenario for the root cause analysis. Like you're saying that, Uncle, like correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you're saying that the customer data was compromised. Like you're saying that like there's no actual company where the customer data is compromised, or we don't know those things definitively. We're just saying that that could be a potential thing that happens. So are we like free to like assume that something happened or this is happening? Because there's no like real data to really back us.
So for the purposes of this exercise, assume the fraud management team hasn't heard back from the cybersecurity team yet. So you have no idea why it's happening. So don't make the assumption that data was breached or.
No, that's not what exactly I mean. Like, I guess let me rephrase. So when you guys did the like 5 eyes scenario for the cybersecurity team, like you guys didn't know that customer data was compromised, right? Like there's no company that you went and saw that like customer data was actually like compromised, or that there's no way that you could actually say that a company didn't prioritize it as a business objective. That's something that you're just saying. Like I feel like, I mean, I don't know, like I don't, because like you're kind of making that up, right? Like you're saying that the company didn't prioritize it. Like I don't.
So for the purposes of the cybersecurity exercise, based on our experience and what we have researched and what we have heard from other experts, we
Right.
know for a fact that there are other companies who have data breaches, and those data breaches result in identities being stolen, and
Right.
those identities become inputs to synthetic identities being created. We
Right.
know that for a fact. It hasn't happened to our company, but we know it has happened to other companies, and it's a documented fact.
Right. So you're just kind of using like what's happening in the industry to make that assumption that they didn't, that this specific company didn't prioritize it.
So in the example that we use for cybersecurity,
yeah,
we made certain assumptions that the leadership team, when they were trying to understand why this happened, they also actually explored and evaluated the individual instances, and they found that their data was compromised and they didn't have security measures, etc.
Right.
So now the facts that have been given to you as a fraud management team, this is a real problem. We have had several instances of this, which is causing financial losses.
Right.
We know that this is a big problem that we have prioritized as a leadership team. And now you as a fraud risk management team have to get to the bottom of this on why are we having losses due to synthetic identity fraud, and what can you do to stop that from happening. That's the ultimate goal.
Right. Okay.
So next step would be something like maybe we consider someone who is not legit as legit. So that's why synthetic identities are created and open accounts and to open accounts and obtain credit. So then we can say, why did we consider them as non-legit as legit? Then we can go move forward like that. That's one possibility.
So just to rephrase your question, Abhilash, why did the company or the systems identify the synthetic identity that was provided by the fraudster as a genuine identity? Okay. So let me write in here for now so that everyone can sort of understand. So let me first write it as why did the system
recognized a fraudster as a good user. Fraudulent account.
synthetic or an account or let's say application as a genuine application. Is that pretty much in line, Abhilash?
Yes.
SA is short for synthetic identity. Does this resonate with everyone?
So would that be going in the box? Because so inside the boxes are so would we just say inside the box that the system recognized it and then we'd ask a why or like
So
why?
I can, I can rephrase this as the system recognized
Right.
SA applications as genuine applications.
Okay. And then if we ask why did the system recognize
Yes,
as a genuine
yes.
application, the next box, and why do
Some
you guys think that the system recognized the synthetic one as a genuine application? What are you guys' thoughts related?
uh, because we so let us take a scenario. The system is designed in such a way that if so as soon as someone applies, we just go to some credit card union, credit people,
Bureaus. Yeah.
credit bureaus, or some other places, and then see if some kind of log exists related to that customer. If something like that exists, we might consider them as legit, or maybe we check their credit score and then consider them as legit. And maybe we can. So there are some multiple branches here because the problem of like the way we verify some problem could the way we verify someone could vary very widely, because we might consider their credit score, or we might go into our internal system and then see if this something related to this existed, or this guy used any of our other products. Maybe that's one way to see it. That's where we can dig into the internal system. That's one branch. Maybe that's because of the internal system, or maybe the external factors that affected this. If it is external factor, then we can say that maybe that's where the problem is, or we need to communicate with other people, something like that.
Yeah, I agree with you, but maybe like to condense all of that into something more simple, we just go to our measures to identify a genuine application currently is not strong enough. Like our communication, and then from that, I guess we can go into various branches. But to put it simple, why was this system recognizing synthetic identities as genuine applications? Is because we don't have the correct guidelines and procedures in place to properly identify genuine applications.
Uh, that is uh, that is too. Uh, aren't we jumping? Like maybe there is some smaller step between which we might be missing, but maybe this is the right one. I don't know. Like,
Well, I,
what do
I
you
mean,
think?
no, I mean it's open. What do you mean? Like, what do you think would fall in between? Because let's say
Mhm.
like all the stuff that you mentioned earlier, like in regards to communications within the credit bureau, I feel like those would come in after the guidelines because then we'll start to see like 'cause
True.
those are all like specific guidelines, right? Like this communication with the bureau regarding the credit history or this other communication, those are all in an essence. Well, that's what I mean by guidelines.
True,
I mean,
true, true. Got it. Yeah. I think this is where we can actually originate the problem and then maybe split it. Maybe because of multiple places or guidelines has failed or something like that. Yeah, I got it.
yeah, I mean, what do you guys think, Vithan and Aditya?
I think what you're saying makes sense, in essence, because if we do it any other way, then there's a scope for not understanding how it like happened. But in this particular way, the questions we are asking, I think, especially this question, would narrow it down quite a bit and give us a very clear understanding of how and where the fraud happened, so that we can tackle that particular issue instead of going on a wild goose chase. I think it makes sense to me, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Are we all good on that then? Do we want to move on to the next one?
Maybe.
Or Aditya, anything?
No, I think we can move to the next one.
Okay. I guess the next question then is why do we not have the right guidelines in place? And
Mhm.
I guess that's when we can start delving into specific instances. And I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, now we have the liberty to say something like, we didn't ask the company for something, like when you guys said we didn't prioritize it as a key business objective. Now we have the liberty to come up with something like that. Or
Um,
That's
what I'm feeling is the solution. The when we ask why to this last box, I'm seeing that we are getting deviated from the problem. I mean, a little bit. I feel like that because why didn't we have guidelines in the first place? Then we might say, okay, this team did not put the guidelines properly. That's why the problem is. But we are not getting into that thing that we consider the guidelines of credit bureau for solving, like that's why we got this problem at the first place. But I might be wrong, because maybe there is some other way to question this so that we can go into the details, specifics of the detail, like specifics of the problem origination, or might be end up in a place where we are just saying that the guidelines are just wrong. That's why.
I see. Then maybe like when we set the system recognize synthetic identity application as a genuine application, we could have two boxes, and one of them could be because we don't have the right guidelines in place, and one of them could be the credit bureaus are giving us.
generally, yeah.
Yeah, the credit bureaus as a whole are giving us information that isn't accurate. Which I don't know if we can make that assumption in this activity.
I mean, we could, at the end of the day, this is our activity. So we could make assumptions based on whatever we are doing. I think this also ties in with the question on why it happened to us. Like, when you come up with like the question on why it's happening to us, we need to also, like, we are basically considering whether it's us who are at fault or whether it's the general guidelines in the banking system for this particular case
Right.
that's at fault. Like, there's a lot of times there are certain things that have not been faced before, and then there's an absolutely new attack that's going on right now. So that's not really something that we could have, like, we could have preempted, obviously, but those were not really some of the guidelines that were shared with us by the authority that deals with it. So I think that question, as Aprima, you were saying, the last question, like, because you don't have the right guidelines, that could have like multiple answers, like Abhilash was mentioning, like couple of answers being these two, and then maybe one which is like a mix of both, like shady guidelines on our part, shady guidelines on the authorities' part, maybe.
One small thought, we can't so it is, so the things which we are coming up with, like it's more relating to which guidelines are not in the right place than why guidelines are not in the right place, right? Like it's not a why problem anymore. The I think the last box, asking why to the last box, is not leading us to what we are thinking. Don't you think?
But
Like which is
it's important to find out that as well, right? Like, unless and until we have a why question on why the guidelines aren't in place, and then figuring out which party is at fault, we don't really know how to tackle the rest of the problem, right?
So,
like,
sorry.
yeah,
I think you
I was
are
saying
jumping already a bit ahead in the game, trying to, who is at the fault. So don't worry about that right now. In here, again, since you already captured this as part of one of the why information, be clear about what do you mean by guidelines. Right. Even if the government or the regulatory bodies are not providing any good practices, but still it's your company who is incurring the losses at the end of the day, right? And the governing body is not responsible for that. It's your responsibility as a company to make sure that you don't incur too many losses.
Right.
And as part of that, you can build whatever solutions or systems that you want.
Mm-hmm. So I guess by guidelines, we mean like the policies that the company has when contacting credit bureaus and other organizations, like the policy it has in lending a credit card, right? Because that's where the fraud is essentially happening. Someone is opening a false credit card. So we have a company, any institution has a policy on how someone gets a credit card, right? Like they go through a whole system, you come in and you do whatever, right? If that policy itself has some innate mistakes already built into it, then a fraud becomes like more likely. So I guess it's thinking like going into the situation that if the fraud is happening, maybe our policy or system for giving out credit is not in the right space. And then from that, we can go into different, in that hierarchy, we can go into different specific things that are going wrong, like specific policies in which a mistake might be happening. And that allows us to go all the way to the bottom where we find that like one big why and try solving that root cause. So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like if we want to move this one, maybe this one comes to a later step. I don't know. Maybe, so I don't know. What do you guys think? Like, do you think maybe we need to take this one out and come up with something else?
This step is actually very good, but what the difficulty which I'm finding to see is when we ask why to this question, the answers are not leading in the correct way.
Or when you ask why
Yeah.
do we not have the right decision system?
Yeah, this actually is a perfect step, but what I'm getting confused is asking why is not making sense on this question. Like on this.
Why don't you have the right? So I'm guessing when you say policy approval, more like a decisioning system.
Right, to give credit.
Okay.
Ah.
Yeah. Why don't you have it?
I mean, it could just come down to the company. Like, for example, one of the things could be the company seeking to prioritize customer experience. I mean, that's the rate of the friction that they chose between between customer experience and, having strong security measures. They're really looking to optimize the customer experience. That could be a potential reason why we're a little more lenient in regards to, I don't know. It's like something I thought of because that's something we talked a lot about yesterday, right? Like about how a company can prioritize customer experience heavily just because they want to help that 99% rather than really focusing on fraud. And maybe we are too focused on customer experience. And then within that comes these lenient procedures that makes it really easy to obtain credit. I don't know, just a thought. What do you guys?
That makes sense. No,
Which means now you are at a point where you need to balance the customer experience and the financial losses that you are incurring. Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that's a big part of the problem as a whole, just thinking about how do we come up with the perfect balance between the two.
So, which means, again, when you think about this one, just investigate a bit closer. So we don't have the right decisioning system in place. So which means you need a right decisioning system.
Right.
How can you get to that? I mean, it's not that we are asking the question of how, still we are asking the question of why. But
maybe we need to,
why don't you have?
Right. So maybe we need to say we haven't determined the proper policies as a company for giving. So that could be a potential. Why do we not have it? Because we haven't truly we haven't spent enough time in determining what the right policy or decisions making system is. And that just on our part, we haven't put in the effort to really come up with an optimized system for that. I feel like, I don't know, like, what do you guys think? I don't want it to be like only me saying stuff. It's obviously all of our decision tree. I mean, it's all of our 5 eyes. So, I mean, what do you guys think? Abhilash, yeah.
I'm just thinking where this is leading. That's what I'm thinking. Like, if we go on asking questions on why on these things, how is it going to end? That's what I'm thinking. So it's fine. You should discuss, and then I'll just tell. And get in.
Just an information, maybe a tip, I guess. This is not set in stone, right? You can always revisit and then try to combine information or split information. Okay, just think out loud. It's okay, even if you get things wrong. When you have all of the information together, you can revisit all of this information again. Right.
Well, on your point, Abhilash, where you were saying like, where does this lead? Like, let's say we haven't spent enough time to determine the right decision making. Like from that, our next thing is, why did we not do it? So now it just comes down to that could be like a root cause. Like now, us as a company, like one of the key action items for us is to determine the right decision making system. And then the other key action item could be to figure out how the right balance between customer experience and risk management. Like those are two key action items from doing all these root cause analysis. Like those are the two root causes. And now we have two things that us as a company and us as a team have to focus on.
So why didn't we end up at a place, at a why box,
Right.
where we say, where there is a text called "we contacted the wrong credit bureau," or
Right.
the way we contacted credit bureau is wrong. Why it is not there in this thing? And I'm thinking, what we could have changed so that we could end up in that situation. That's what I'm thinking about.
So in a way, this points to that, right, Abhilash? We haven't spent enough time to determine what is that right decisioning system. And that can include everything. Why did we not approach one specific credit bureau, or even if we have approached them, why did they not give us any additional information which would have enabled us to identify the synthetic identity?
And doesn't this lead to the next question on this? Why will be like, why didn't we spend enough time to determine the right decisioning system, right? Like that could actually go into resources problems and the money problem.
It could be. Yeah, it could be.
Right. I mean, I guess the possibilities are endless. Like if you want to keep going you can keep asking a why to a why to a why. But I guess there comes to a certain point where us as individuals, and I guess in the real world, a company would have to say like, this could actually be a root problem. Like this, I feel like if you really wanted to, you can make this problem go on forever. Like you can have a why to a why to a why to a why, and it could be an endless loop. But at a certain point, we need to determine that, hey, the next why that's coming isn't really what we need to be focusing on. Let's stop right here and focus on this, right? We can say, why haven't we spent enough time? We can say our company, we have to, like, the way that the resources are allocated. And then we can do another why, and we can go and find a different root cause. So I guess it just comes down to us as a team to decide, like, when is it enough and when do we decide to start focusing on this as the root cause. That's like at least my understanding of it. And correct me if I'm wrong.
You're spot on, Apramya, over there. Because there is no silver bullet to this. There is no. This is not an exercise where you have like very straightforward one single answer.
Right.
And think about it as, I'm going to take an analogy of the parallel universes. Okay, where the four of you being the executive leadership team.
Right.
There are 10 different parallel universes, and in each one of them, you have taken a different approach, more like a different branch or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Each one of them could have panned out slightly differently because you would have identified slightly different root causes.
Right.
And you might have prioritized slightly different things. Is that right or wrong? It may not be apparent right away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Nevertheless, as a leadership team, you have chosen that particular decision and you'll be moving forward in that direction.
Right.
If you have some checkpoints, like maybe after every few months, we are going to revisit this one, that's a different topic of discussion. But my point is, as an executive leadership team, you would be taking a decision. And then once you populate all of this information, you would review all of that information again. And if it looks good to you, all of you are going to sign it off and then probably take certain actions accordingly.
I see.
Right.
Right. And then, Abhilash, on your point where you were talking about why didn't we end up to a situation where we're looking towards the credit bureaus, I feel like at that point, the point of the exercise is obviously for us to keep asking why till we get an answer. When we're looking for a specific root cause, I feel like when we're assuming and we're really trying to shift the whole analysis towards reaching that, I feel like it kind of defeats the purpose, because then we're really trying to change our answers and shift our answers to a point where we get to the root cause. But I feel like the point is to really just go into it with like no biases and no thoughts or no already innate idea on what you think the root cause is, and then just going through the activity, and then where you end up, you end up. And maybe if you feel like, hey, maybe this isn't the right thing, we go and evaluate. But I don't think it should necessarily be an activity where we're like, I think the root cause is that we need to reach out to the banking institutions, and we need to figure out, or to the credit bureaus, and we need to figure out like how to make the whole tree and to look and to reach that instance, right? It's supposed to be a more fluid.
Agreed. Since we are doing this for the first time, I'm actually trying to reverse engineer the process. See how can we take right decisions to reach. If there is a real problem, let us say I am considering that this is a problem for this. Like, what is the process that could take me to this process? I'm trying to reverse engineer that so that next time when we try to ask questions, we might end up asking right questions, since we don't. Because
I get what you're saying.
Something called as asking right question, right? You can't just ask any question.
I get what you're saying.
That's what I'm trying to come up. Like, for example, in the third step, we can ask saying that the system recognized SI application as genuine application. We can say what made the system to ask to why did the system recognize the application as genuine application? We can say that because we trusted the wrong sources.
Right, and that the wrong sources
could be one of the steps which we could take in third thing, right? So that is the different perspective which I was trying to explore. For the time, so.
And I feel like that's something we can do right here too, right? We can say we don't necessarily have to have only one box. We don't just have to say because we don't have the right decision, right? In that step itself, we could say we trusted the wrong sources. And then why did we trust the wrong sources? Because we had complete trust in the banking, in the credit bureaus. And then why did we have complete trust in the credit? Like, it can go in that step too, right? We can have a two split happen right there and then.
Again, I was not saying that. Of course, there is no right and wrong way.
Right.
Why question?
I definitely agree with you that the credit bureaus and trusting them is where the problem most probably happened. And I
am trying to figure out what is the thing that we are making, like what is the thing that we are considering wrong, could be potentially considering wrong, that is taking us to some other place. Or what is that we are not doing that is not taking us to the place where we think the problem is. So that's what I was trying to reverse engineer. Of course.
But I mean, if we want to go with the wrong sources, like, we can keep going in that one too, because I think that's a great point as well, and one definitely worth exploring. So, like, if Aditya and Bitan as well, like, do you guys want to do the why analysis for the we trusted the wrong sources as well? Like, I would.
Maybe we can do the why thing on the one which we already were going in. We try to explore the end, because I think one of the ends we already explored for this thing. Why we trusted wrong sources, that's because of credit bureau. Okay. So maybe we can do why on this. Just curious what will end up.
I sort of had a question. Don't you guys think that we are moving along the lines of a team that is more in working in terms of compliance and decision making, rather than a team that is trying to establish whether or not this is a fraud risk management issue? Because for a fraud risk team, I need to first establish there is risk. What is that risk, and where that risk can be mitigated, rather than finding out who took what is our ground truth and why that ground truth needs to be changed, or how that ground truth needs to be changed. Because I think all of us, we are approaching the problem from a point of view of somebody who's taking a decision, rather than somebody who's going to provide a report to somebody who does take the decision, and then they take the decision on whether or not this made sense.
Right. No, definitely. Like, I personally didn't completely look at it from purely a lens of fraud risk management. If I'm being completely honest, like I don't have a complete like great idea on the day-to-day tasks of a fraud risk management. So are you saying that the fraud risk management team like they only care about like figuring out how to mitigate the risks and how to have like a risk insurance type of policy in place so this doesn't happen in the future? Or like where do you think how do you think a risk management team like what do you think their tasks regarding this issue would entail?
So I think once we've come to the point where we've got the question on the ground truth, right? Like whether we trusted the wrong sources or whether we have the right policies, etc.
Right.
From there, I think we should focus more on the risk of these policies rather than the source of these policies and what these policies uh, like entail, because that is something that we usually a fraud risk team does not have like control over. They have control over trying and figuring out what the organization can do better to prevent risk to the organization. So
okay.
Yeah.
So then what would you think be the why for we don't have the right decision system? Like from a fraud risk management, like what do you think the next why would be instead of let's say because companies prioritizing customer experience, what would you replace that with?
So in my opinion, when we come to that question, right, then the next thing we should be asking about is what is the risk for that particular thing to happen? Like how many customers could get affected? Like we right now we have say a subset of maybe 15,000 customers who've been affected. What is the worst case scenario in this particular case? So in the sense that are there like more customers that will get affected if we do not patch this thing up right away? Or is it something that will go away with time? Is it more like a software bug that could be fixed overnight? Is it like I think we need to think on those lines. Again, I'm not really sure if I'm being eloquent about what I'm thinking, because I sort of have an idea, but I'm not really. I don't know how to put it.
I get what you're trying to say. You're not exactly saying the direction, because the points which you have mentioned might not lead us to the point where we find the root cause.
Right.
But the direction which you are trying to drive is correct, because we should think in those terms actually.
Right.
But I feel like when we look at like how many customers we're losing and how much of a risk we're gonna incur, like I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, it's like we're looking more at the symptoms rather than the cause of the issue. Like how many customers we lose, I feel like that's a symptom of this problem. And I feel like the whole point of the root cause analysis is because we don't want to be looking at symptoms, we want to be looking at a root cause. Which I mean, I might be wrong. I mean, that's just my point of view regarding it. But I definitely agree with you in the sense that we need to look at it from a risk management lens rather than a general overview of the company lens, I guess. When we're risk managing.
I mean, that's a fair point.
So if Aprime, I know you mentioned that you're not very clear about what could be the responsibilities of the fraud risk management team. Maybe if I have to simplify it even further, think of, so since we are specifically focusing on at this step, fraudsters are using synthetic identities to open accounts and obtain credit, right? So from that perspective, consider the responsibility of the fraud risk management team is to mitigate or to manage the risk that is involved when there is a new application. What is the risk that that application being a fraudulent? Okay. If you identify it correctly as a fraudulent, thumbs up.
Right.
If you incorrectly identify that as a fraudulent, thumbs down because you are losing a customer.
Right.
If you do a thumbs up for an actual fraudulent application, but considering that it's a genuine application, then you are incurring losses.
Right.
And if you identify
a false, but it's a true, and then that's also it's basically a confusion matrix. That's what you're saying. Yeah,
exactly. Okay. So you are trying to take a decision over there on what to do for each and every application that you see. And to check if it's a fraudulent application or not. And you usually make that decision based on certain information that you know or that you will try to capture about that applicant.
Right. Right. Okay.
I hope that helped.
Yeah, that helped. That helped. So I'm thinking like now, how would this change? Maybe this tree would be more applicable to like, I don't know, like a product team or something in regards to like customer experience, but I don't even know, like, would it even be considered?
Madhu, one quick question. If you were doing this, is there any particular step that you would have in a different position? Like, assuming that what we've done is correct. I don't want to get an answer from you on whether we are correct or wrong. I just want to know, do we have any step that you think we should have done later on? Or are the steps in the right order at least?
Okay. So, good point. I think in a way you are asking me for my review on the information that you already came up with. I think it's pretty
sly with that.
I mean, let's say like we're not in a fraud risk management team and we just did this as a general root cause analysis, like, and let's say we're done with it now, like this is our end, we're done with the tree, like what would you say about it? Like we're not fraud risk anymore, we're just doing a general root cause analysis as a company executive or something.
Okay. So, okay, but let's say if this is the end of your cause analysis. Okay. Right. Now, what you need to do is you need to look at the leaves or the endpoints of each one of them and see if that feels like, if there is something that you can do over there. No, because companies prioritizing customer experience as top priority. Okay. Now, well, if you think that this is truly the root cause, okay, you have an opportunity to revisit that. Okay, maybe I need to balance between the losses and the customer experience. Now, as a fraud risk management team, you'd say that, okay, I don't want to take more risk because I'm seeing too many losses, financial losses. So I'm okay to sacrifice a bit of customer experience. Okay. So you'll make that decision. Right. Okay. So in a way, what you're trying to say is my fraud rate. So usually there would be some metrics that each of the team would follow. So in this case, let's call that as fraud rate. Out of every 100 applications, okay, you are allowing, out of 100, no, the metric would be slightly different. Okay, out of every 100 fraud applications that you receive, okay, you are okay with earlier your customer experience. Earlier, you were saying that negatives. Sorry. Okay, let me take a step back. Out of every 100 applications that you receive, earlier, since your customer experience is of topmost important point, you are okay with letting go of some of the fraudulent applications as genuine applications. Okay. Let's say that number is maybe as genuine applications. Okay. Out of every 100 fraudulent applications, you are letting go of, let's say, 50 applications as genuine applications, and you're okay with that. Now you want to reduce that because you want to reduce the financial losses. Yeah. Okay. Now maybe your new target is maybe 25. You want to pass through only 25 of the fraudulent applications. Okay. So that would be, as an executive leadership team, that's what you might sign off your or give the direction to your solution management team within the fraud risk management. Okay. So which means they need to come back now. Where do you think that would impact?
I think the customer experience, like changing it.
And does it impact anything within the company? or would it require more work or less work or no work?
I think it would
Your
require
opinion.
a good amount of work, like in regards to even the decision making aspect of it, because
Yep.
for us, dependent.
Right, because now you are supposed to let pass only 25 applications out of every 100 fraudulent applications,
Yeah,
right? Which means your decision making system needs to be a lot more.
more
Lenient, essentially.
like either less lenient.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I mean, not 100%. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So which means it impacts that decision, impacts your decision making system.
Right.
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 Okay. So that would be one takeaway point. You would give your team the direction that okay, go and change my decision making system. That way, you are letting go no more than 25% of the fraudulent applications through the system.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's investigate this one. We haven't spent enough time to determine the right decisioning system.
Mm-hmm.
So it can actually mean quite a few things. So this is where maybe we can try to have a bit more of list, but let's say this is the leaf.
Right.
So that means you don't think you have the best decision making system in place.
Right.
So again, you have to go back and then review your decision making system.
Mm-hmm. So it's like we need to allocate more resources and everything to
these two. We have more resources or reprioritize.
Right.
We even with the existing resources, reprioritize the tasks that they're supposed to work on.
Right.
Okay. Now let's look into this one. We trusted the wrong sources.
Mm-hmm.
So usually, again, if you are making this conclusion in this assessment, it means that it is already backed up by some data.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. I'm assuming that you guys already did due diligence to come up with the conclusion. Okay. So in this case, if you will have the choice of changing the sources, as in replacing the source with some other similar source to get any accurate information.
Right.
If it's something like changing the credit bureau information from one source to the another source.
Yeah.
Okay. Or it can be something like, okay, I don't know enough information about my applicant. I can try to use some other services that some other company provides where they provide the email ID or the phone number.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay. Or maybe the zip code in which the person is living, any other information, or the gender itself, anything. Okay. You can try to augment the information as well with on top of the existing information.
Yeah.
Okay. So those would be the type of conclusions that you can take in here. And again, it goes back to your fraud risk management team to guide them that, okay, now try to enrich your data set.
Yeah.
And then the moment when you enrich the data set, it may involve changing the decision making system or it may not. It depends upon how you want to solve it. Right. If you just want to ensure that the quality of the data is really high, then you can just leave the decision making system untouched. But in some cases, you might end up touching it too. Okay. So that's how I would go about depending upon the current state.
I see.
I know we are already 7 minutes over. What I feel like, Sandeep, maybe if this feels right to you too. This is really great. I really like the conversation that you guys are having. And again, I want to reiterate that there is no one single solution. Okay. If let's say if Sandeep and I we are having the same conversation on this topic, today we might come up with one particular branch, and after 1 month we might come up with another branch.
Right.
Okay, slightly different branch. So don't worry about having to get the right information because you don't know what is the right information. Just try to populate the information and then review the information as a team together if it makes sense or not, and if it's in the right place, and what type of outcomes that you can try to take away and then provide to the executive leadership team. Okay. So from that perspective, I feel like as a next step, you can take some time. Since today is Sunday, the next session is going to be on Saturday. You have good amount of break. Okay. Each one of you can probably create your own tree. Okay. Have an internal discussion before next Saturday. Gather and discuss all of your thoughts and come up with one single decision that all of you agree upon. And then we can review that in the next session.
Okay.
Cool.
Does
Madhu, to that, I had a question. Could we
Yes.
form like a Discord group or a WhatsApp group so that we could have like internal conversations? Because I don't think we have each other's contacts.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We can do like anything for works for me, Discord or.
So I would disagree that we have the Google Classroom.
Well, that's a little more formal. It's just a little more formal, to be honest.
Sure. Again, in terms of having a channel, we can definitely enable that communication be done. But Sandeep, any thoughts on that?
So I just want to reiterate one point that the objective is not to get the right root cause analysis. The objective is to help you understand the importance of thinking about root causes. The objective is to really build a habit of doing deep analysis before jumping into solutions. That's really the objective. So I think this exercise of each of you doing this analysis on your own and then coming together, I think would be a very valuable exercise for all of you. So what I would suggest, if all of you are okay, since we are going to use Slack for the network anyway, if all of you are okay with Slack, we can enable that and you can use that to discuss internally. Does that work?
That would be great. Yeah.
That works. Yeah.
So we'll enable Slack by tomorrow, and we'll also start add Naveen, so you can reach out to him also, especially if you have questions about fraud management or in general, you want to run some ideas by him, you can ping him.
Sounds good.
That sounds great.
Okay.
And I'll share the current slide where I have captured all of your thoughts so that if you want to revisit the information.
Yeah, thanks, Madhu.
So thank you all for going over. And if you could do the same thing as you did yesterday, just give us a rating on a scale of 1 to 10 of what you thought the quality of this session was or the value of this session was. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Talk soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
And using the Slack channel, you can reach out to Madhu and I as well through the week.
Sounds good.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.